Hi guys, and welcome to my channel. My name is Sonia Petkova. I am an experienced tutor of SAT and other exams, as well as I help students to craft the best possible version of their admission essays and just holistically their whole application. Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about how to do better on the SAT reading section, and to a lesser extent the writing section as well. Now, and I'm going to focus on one aspect of SAT reading preparation that I think is quite overlooked, but is very, very necessary today. Because young people today, as yourselves or your children, if you're a parent watching this, live in a very technological culture where their attention span is quite short. Children today and high schoolers spend a large part of their free time playing video games or being on their social media on their phones, or shifting through YouTube videos. And the attention span is very short. Research has shown that usually after 1 minute at the most, being on the internet, we click on another link, or people don't even watch full songs today, and so on. Now, why is this an issue in terms of your SAT preparation? Well, for the simple reason that the reading section is made up of five pieces of writing, one of which is always fiction. And it could be fiction from even the 19th century or early 20th century classical writing, not only American, but it could also be British, or it could be from a writer who is Indian American, and so on and so forth. Now, my experience is that a lot of students who struggle with the SAT reading section struggle, number one, with vocabulary questions, and number two, with their general understanding of text, especially the fiction text. And also the other big problematic issue is the history text. So usually the fiction and the history text are the two texts that create a lot of difficulty for a lot of students, regardless of where they are in the world, in America or in Russia or in Asia. So what happens is that a lot of students don't have reading culture. They have read some books at school, but they don't read on a consistent basis. So, number one, this creates issues with their vocabulary. So they don't know a lot of words, because in order to know vocabulary, you need to see it in context. You usually see it in writing, not in speech, because in speech, research has shown that we only use something like 500 words at the most over and over and over again, or maybe 1,000, but sometimes even much, much less. So it is only in writing that you're likely to find more and more and words and more complex expressions and so on. So your literacy is much higher when you actually read. The second issue is that when you don't read, when students don't read, it is challenging for them to be intelligent readers. What do I mean by intelligent readers? I mean to be able to read a text and actually understand the deep meanings, the deep ideas, the overarching, the whole text. So connect to the characters if it's fiction, and figure out what kind of people they are, and make sense of the whole thing. So when students are not intelligent readers, they get only fragmented understanding of the text, so they understand bits of here and there. This also applies to the history reading, and this results in poorly answered questions, especially when the questions ask for a more general understanding of the text as a whole, rather than questions that focus only on single lines. So what is the solution to this issue? So obviously students have to read more. Now this seems simple, but it is not so simple. It is not very easy and it is not very practical to ask students to read whole books today, for a variety of reasons. Number one, that they don't have much time because they're very consumed with schoolwork and extracurricular activities and everything around it. Number two, that it is not so easy, as we said, that today's students or human brains have shorter attention spans, so it is not so easy for people in general to read books, especially younger people. So even though their whole list of SAT recommended literature, like all the classics, Jane Eyre and Moby Dick and The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and all of these, very few students actually go and read them. Now, I personally recommend, and I have seen to be effective, the following. Number one, to read articles. Now, the articles have to be from good sources, from sources that you can trust to have a good register of the English language, and they will ideally be on more serious topics and be somewhat in-depth. Where can you find such articles? And by the way, I will link all of these below. Number one, New York Times. So you can pick from many different sections, depending on what interests you, like travel, politics, economics, opinions, health, fashion, science. And New York Times has an excellent range of vocabulary, excellent expression. It is fantastic for preparing for SAT reading. So you can read whole articles. You don't have to check every unfamiliar word, but it is not a bad idea when you feel that the word is important to look it up in the Cambridge Dictionary, add it to your vocabulary. If you have a tutor, prepare some summaries for the tutor. Summarize the articles, the main point, and so on. Now, if for some reason New York Times is not your cup of tea, there are some other sources, such as if you're interested in business, entrepreneurship, those kind of issues mean something to you, you can check out Forbes. Now, Forbes, I feel the register of language is not as high as New York Times, but it's something that you can read on a consistent basis. And then there are some excellent sources for other sources. So, for example, the mosaicscience.com. It is an independent news source that is funded by a health organization called Welcome. And I will link it down below. So they publish wonderful articles on medicine and science and all of that. There is another source called scroll.in. It is published in India, but it is excellent from the standpoint of English language. Again, independent newspaper. Again, a lot of interesting articles on medicine and culture and science and so on. The point is that you can pick your own news source, but it is good to check with a professional or with your tutor or a teacher to see whether the articles are of the sufficient register that they could actually be helpful for you in your SAT preparation. Now, of course, and also the positive of reading articles, the advantage that you can read it on the bus, in your phone, and so on. Of course, if that is not possible on a consistent basis for whatever reason, at the very least, you as a student who is preparing for American universities should be watching serious documentaries on YouTube. There are a whole number of, there are many different channels, again, business channel, entrepreneurship channels, a lot of printed newspapers and other media have their YouTube channels. I personally recommend DW documentaries, Deutsche Welle, the German news source, because their documentaries have very good English language register. They cover topics deeply, and the topics are very diverse and very interesting, and there will be definitely something, there's likely to be something that you would be interested in. So, and finally, of course, you can, it would be great if you could read some things like printed sources on the internet, rather than, of course, a book would be great, but you can also read them on the internet that are shorter than a book. So, for example, especially for the history passage, if you read maybe just a little bit from the first chapter, for example, from The Origin of Species by Darwin, because it showcases the exact language that was used throughout the 19th century. So it's excellent from that standpoint. Also, you can read the speeches and articles by Abraham Lincoln, for example. They are all in PDF files available free on the internet. These are excellent to build your vocabulary and understanding of the general topics that are given in the history passages, which usually cover women's rights, abolitionism, the rights and struggles of Black people in America, also the French Revolution, so the struggle between the empire and the people, and maybe a few others, but those are generally the main issues discussed in the history chapters. So again, to summarize, if you want to increase your SAT verbal score and you're struggling a little bit with the passages, please do read and watch pertinent, useful documentaries on YouTube or on some other channel. What can you read? You can read newspapers such as the New York Times, Forbes, Scroll.in, Medium, Mosaic Science, and some others chosen by you, but also double checked by a professional tutor or teacher. Number two, some shorter books or articles over the internet, such as Abraham Lincoln, or maybe some chapters from books. And number three, of course, you can, rather than picking a book from SAT recommended list, you can actually pick a book of your liking and have somebody double check for you its quality. For example, one of my students who really needed to read some literature to upgrade his vocabulary and understanding of text, because his scores were in the range of 1400, he wanted to get to 1500. So I recommended him a few books, but also opened up the possibility for him to find his own source. And he did find the excellent book on psychology by a prominent psychologist who was also a Stanford professor. And he showed me the book. I looked at it. I saw that the register of vocabulary was wonderful, very high level, and that the content was great, and he was interested in the book, so it was a perfect match. And I have seen in my experience that when students start reading consistently, for example, one article per week, and again check it with your tutor and so on, have consistent conversations about these articles. So when students begin to read and begin to watch news or documentaries online in English, their level of English, number one, improves quite dramatically in some cases, and number two, the understanding of the SAT reading passages improves, and therefore their overall score improves as well. So I hope this has been helpful for you. I will be very happy to answer any questions that you might have. Feel free to contact me. All my information is down below. Please subscribe to the channel if you like this content. And I'm really looking forward to talking to you soon. Bye-bye.